Part 241. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2405. It's not a secret that Zhou Man and Bai Shan have a marriage contract. 9 out of 10 people in the capital who know the two of them know, and the remaining one may not be sensible. Although the old lady who asked this question was not from the capital, she also knew it. The reason for asking this question was to lead to the next question. After Man Bao said that he was engaged, the old lady's eyes fell on Zhou Liru together, and said with a smile, "This is Lord Zhou's niece? She looks so good. How old are you this year? Are you engaged yet?" Zhou Liru glanced at the aunt, took a breath, and lowered his head after blushing. When Man Bao saw it, he quickly said, "She's still young, so don't worry. Looking to be about the same age as Lord Zhou, getting married can be delayed by 2 years, but getting married is okay. Yeah, the girl can talk about her marriage when she's 13, otherwise all the good gentlemen will be picked away." Man Bao looked left and right, and found that they were surrounded by circles, and now he couldn't find a good reason to run, so he simply put on his posture and asked, "Does the old lady have any good candidates to recommend?" When the other party saw her clearly asking, his eyes suddenly froze, and he immediately said, "Yes, I have a grandnephew, who is about the same age as her, and a talented person. This time, he will come with me for wedding wine. If Lord Zhou is willing, I will let it go. He came in to see you." Man Bao smiled and said, "The old lady is too impatient. They are still young, so they are not in a hurry to see each other, but we as adults can help take a look first. Don't know who is in the house." The other party immediately introduced that it was a relative of Liu's family in Jinyang. Their family was an official in Jinyang. Although they were not big, they only had 5 ranks, but they were quite decent. Man Bao listened with a smile, and then asked, "I don't know what your great-nephew's name is. Which school is he studying in now?" "His name is Lu Yi, and he's very sensible, so he's doing things with his brother now," the old lady said with a smile. Lord Zhou knew at a glance that he was good-looking, tall and strong. "Your niece is a good match." Man Bao raised his eyebrows slightly, took the tea and said with a smile, "It's a good boy, but my family still needs to study. It is estimated that after 3 or 4 years of study, I can barely graduate." Man Bao tried hard to recall what her mother said when she said kisses to her 4th brother and 5th brother, but she thought it was inappropriate, and after thinking about it, she said, "If you want me to say it, girls don't have to be in a hurry to say kisses, although it's a girl, but you should also practice your skills well, and when you leave your parents in the future, you can have the skills to support yourself, and you'll have nothing to worry about." The old lady was stunned for a moment, then forced a smile. "How can a family like us still need a daughter-in-law to go out in person to make a living?" The other old ladies also agreed, but Mrs. Lu looked at Zhou Man in surprise. Man Bao smiled and said, "That's true. It's not a shame to be able to support yourself and your family. Besides, I'm doing something I like, so I'm even happier." An old lady hesitated for a while, but still said, "Women should still give priority to husbands and children." Man Bao smiled and said, "Of course we have to support our husbands and children, just like men have to work hard to secure a wife and a son in the future. If the husband is an official, I can help them in their career. This is to support the husband, and I have read a lot, experienced a lot of things, and I can teach them better when I have children in the future, old lady, don't you think?" The old ladies. Zhou Liru nodded again and again, and whispered, "The prince and the prince concubine like my little aunt, and they also like my little uncle very much." This is a heavy blow, and no one can say that Zhou Man's remarks are wrong, because this is indeed the husband. The old ladies looked at Zhou Liru, whose eyes were shining, and knew that this one was the same as Zhou Man, so the thought of being a matchmaker lightened a lot. Mrs. Lu became enthusiastic, glanced at the dessert plate next to their aunts and nephews, turned her head and instructed the servant, "Go to the kitchen and ask for a plate of dessert that is not very sweet, you need crispy meat, want it just came out hot." Liu's residence rarely entertains guests with crispy meat as a snack, but the servants just stunned for a moment and then bowed back. Mrs. Lutai turned back to meet the eyes of the old sisters and smiled, "The two young girls must have a good appetite. It's been a while since dinner," and they just added. Mrs. Lutai smiled and asked Zhou Liru, "Are you tired of studying medicine?" Zhou Liru shook his head, "Not tired." "Silly boy, how can you not get tired of reading? That kid in my family, he doesn't call him tired, but it hurts my heart to see him reading early and going to bed late." Manbao almost choked on the tea. She coughed twice and put down the teacup, and Mrs. Lu said with a smile, "Although he doesn't complain about being hard or tired when he reads, but if no one is watching, he will be lazy. Last year's trip to the western regions was thanks to you for taking care of him and supervising him. This time, I can get the Ming dynasty in one fell swoop. By the way, what books did he read along the way?" Zhou Liru could really answer this question, because along the way, she read and listened to Mr. Zhuang with them. Unfortunately, her cultural class was the worst, and she was always left alone with Lu Huan to recite the text. So Zhou Liru said, "I have studied the 6 articles in Kong Wang Ji Gao and Wen Ho Ji Ming, and the rest are a few books of poetry, and the rest are some homework." Mrs. Lutai saw what she said so clearly, her eyes lit up, she paused and smiled, "What is the first chapter of Kong Kong Ji Gao?" The pattern of this question and answer was so similar to Mr. Zhuang's, Zhou Liru tightened his back and said, "It's called Bai Ming," and King Kong ordered the book to be completed, and it was separated into the suburbs of Zhou to make Bai Ming. The old ladies on the side were stunned for a while, especially Lu Yi's cousin. At this time, seeing Mrs. Liu's happy face, she couldn't help but regret it. She lowered her eyes and thought for a moment, then raised her head and smiled at Zhou Man, "Master Zhou, I have a young grandson studying in the county school, but unfortunately he won't come to the capital this time, otherwise I can let Master Zhou see him." Before Zhou Man could speak, Mrs. Lutai smiled and said, "So this is fate. Next time my brother and sister bring him, I will ask his cousin to take him around the capital." Mrs. Lutai suddenly raised her eyebrows slightly and said to Manbao, "Huaner was drunk before, wasn't she?" Manbao nodded. Mrs. Lutai sighed, "It's difficult for you to take care of him, I have heard him say, you have encountered many difficulties and obstacles on your journey westward, and the group of people arrived in the western regions after life and death, and it took a long time to return from the western regions." Beijing. Manbao immediately said that this is what she should do. After all, she is the chief officer, so she naturally wants to protect her accompanying people as much as possible. He added, he also helped the mission a lot, otherwise His Majesty would not have given him the county baron. "See you at 9 o'clock in the evening, it's really too cold today, it's been raining all the time, I can't wait to grow in bed." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2406. Speaking of this matter, Mrs. Lu felt refreshed. It was a surprise for the couple that Lu Huan was awarded a title. It can be said that with this title, Lu Huan would not be an official for a lifetime, and it would be enough to be a playboy for the rest of his life. When the time comes to divide the family property, give him a little more real estate, which will be enough for him to be safe and rich for a lifetime. Mrs. Lu was more kind to Zhou Man, and said actively, "Knowing that Mr. Zhou's time is rare, I won't let you talk to us old ladies. Come, send Mr. Zhou to find Mr. Bai and the others." Manbao left immediately, and she was also afraid that they would talk about marriage again. When they left, there was only a group of old ladies left. An old lady said, "Sister is trying to kiss Huaner." Mrs. Lutai smiled and said, "Huaner is not too young, isn't it normal to say kissing?" "It's normal, but it's not very normal to talk to Zhou Liru. What is the family background of the Zhou family, and what is the family background of the Lu family? Why are there so many uninvited guests this time? Naturally, because Lu Huan was awarded the title, many people wanted to kiss Lu Huan. But in the end, it was in a large crowd, there were so many people, and many words were difficult to say, so everyone smiled and turned to look at the storyteller in the pavilion. After waiting for everyone to change places, or to rest, the sister-in-law who had the best relationship with Mrs. Lu followed her to sit in the side room of the main courtyard. Sister-in-law, you don't really look at that little girl from Zhou's house. Right. Mrs. Lu Tai said, it's a family like us. Girls have been taught since childhood, and they may not be able to say a few articles in Kongwang Gao, let alone memorize them, marrying wives and virtuous people, family background, and so on. You can put it aside for now, I think she's pretty good. The second lady frowned, but this family is too bad. Before Zhou Man, their family was muddy. Mrs. Lu Tai said indifferently, there is a Mian Zhou shepherd in their family, and Zhou Man is now a fourth-rank editor, which means that her family is a little weaker, but you can see her ability, not to mention the aristocratic young lady, she is the son of an aristocratic family. How many are comparable to her? She said, it's not that I am self-deprecating. Our own children know the details. Huaner is not a very capable person. To say something disrespectful, before the palace was going to choose a consort for Princess Mingda, I thought about asking Huaner to work hard. Mrs. Lu Tai said, I thought, he can't read well, and he is simple and straightforward. Commander-in-law, even if he is incapable of becoming an official in the future, there are not many people in this capital who can bully him. But his grandfather didn't agree, saying that His Majesty loves Princess Mingda, and he must not look down on him. I thought about it a little bit, and I think Princess Mingda is too good. Although there are few concubines who take up real positions, His Majesty definitely doesn't want to be too wronged. Princess Mingda, when the time comes to pick on the thorns, it's not good to see him on the left, and he is not good on the right, they are also a pair of grudges, and that's all. Originally, his grandfather and I didn't even think about his promising future, so we wanted him to take the Mingjing Imperial examination. If he couldn't pass the examination, he would be a county or minor official. Mrs. Lu Tai said, when the time comes, let him marry a wife who is good at common affairs, and have his eldest brother and a few cousins to look after him, so he can live a peaceful life. In fact, the latter method is recognized by their family, that is, Lu Huandu has said to Bai Shan and the others more than once, I will be able to call the shots when I leave the office in the future. If you have a bad relationship with the princess, you will have to report to the servants repeatedly when you enter the princess mansion, and if you encounter some rude servants, you will have to stand outside and be angry. The emperor is staring at you, the queen is staring at you, and the other princes and princesses in the palace are staring at you, especially Princess Mingda, who is so favored, it's too miserable to be her concubine. As long as Lu Huan thought that he had been ruled by his grandparents for the first half of his life, and then by the royal family for the rest of his life, it was terrifying to think about it. Mrs. Lu Tai naturally saw her grandson's thoughts, and said to Mrs. Tai, look at what kind of people are these people who came to the banquet this time and what I mentioned. If you look carefully, how many people can you compare to last week's Liru? Individual. The second lady smiled, what did the sister-in-law say, how can they not compare? Mrs. Lu Tai shook her head, they're really not comparable. If you think about it carefully, how many of the girls they mentioned are really right in line with Huaner? The second lady was stunned. Huaner's grandfather will not talk about it, his father is also a fifth-rank official, but these girls they mention have the same official rank as his father, either the concubine or the second daughter, the eldest daughter can be raised, not by father or brother. The official position depends on the uncles and cousins, but the official rank is very small. I know that Huaner was awarded the title of Baron of the county. After seeing Huaner, they also felt that he was not very promising, and he has a brother above him. Mrs. Lu Tai paused. At this point she also had to admit that she was biased. The family's political resources basically favored Lu Dalin, leaving very little for Lu Huan. Zhou Liru's uncle is still a Mian Zhou shepherd, and he is a well-known righteous person in the world. He has a name with His Majesty, not to mention Mrs. Zhou, her aunt and uncle have a bright future in the future. The relationship between and Zhou Bai's family will become closer and closer. After all, marriage is a combination of interests, and the benefits she brings to Huaner are no worse than those of the little ladies in the official family. He added, apart from the combination of interests and look at the character and means of the mistress, she is not bad. You just saw that, when it comes to reading, even the little ladies you have raised are probably not comparable, not to mention the means, in the future. Determined to be a little lady like her aunt, will she still not be able to handle the household chores? The second lady stopped talking. The more Mrs. Lu spoke, the more excited she said, I'll mention this to his grandfather tonight. The second lady, can the uncle agree? And Huaner, can he agree? Mrs. Lu Tai said, just ask and you'll know. However, Mrs. Lu Tai did not ask Lu Huan first, but slapped Lu Shangshu first. Lu Shangshu pouted and said, mud legs? Counting down several generations, who is not from mud legs? Our family is a family of farming and reading, not a family who can only read poetry and books. What did Jiniang think? He even took out a concubine to tell people his relatives. He paused and said, I'm not saying that Lu Yi's children are not good, but I think they are unworthy. Zhou Man's niece is still studying in the imperial doctor's office. She has 4 direct disciples, and one is now a doctor in the Imperial College Hospital. Help, the 2 are in the local medical office. Although the official rank is small, they are still the 9th rank. With Zhou Man's current medical skills, they are backed by a big tree, and it is only a matter of time to enter the Thai hospital. I want to see, Zhou Liru, it will not be bad in the future. Lu Yi and Huaner are about the same age. At this age, they don't study early, and only do some errands for others. What will they do in the future? This marriage is not suitable, you don't get involved, so as not to be full in the future. Blame us for being ugly, Lu Shangshu said, this person is not a merciful person, even a person like Lord Wei would dare to be scolded at the great court. Mrs. Lu Tai asked, it's not suitable for Lu Yi, do you think it's suitable for Huaner? Lu Shangshu was stunned for a moment. After reacting, he turned his head to look at his old wife, shook his head and smiled and said, You just said it, why turn such a big bend? It's too cold tonight, so I'll put off the day of the 3rd day until tomorrow. I decided to buy a small table to write on the bed tomorrow. The cold in the south is really hurting people, I desperately need Angela's fireball. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2407. Mrs. Lu Tai said, I didn't turn around. She wanted to tell Lu Yi that the kiss was true, and I wanted to tell Huaner that the kiss was also true. She said, there are women in a family who ask for it, and whoever grabs it will have the ability. Lu Shangshu glanced at the old wife and felt that she was talking nonsense. Can her grandnephew be comparable to our Huaner? Although we Huaner are not very promising, but now not only have the title of honor, but also passed the Mingjing examination. In the future, we will not be able to become a high-ranking official. It is still possible to seek a real position of the 4th or 5th rank. Can Lu Yi compare? Although Lu Shangshu couldn't look down on Lu Huan in every possible way, he also had to compare who he was with. He couldn't compare with his eldest grandson, Bai Shanyan, or someone like that, but he was more than enough to compare with Lu Yi. Mrs. Lu Tai asked him, "What do you think of this marriage?" Lu Shangsha pondered and said after a while, "Our family is not the kind of family that sticks to their status, and their Zhou family is now considered a newcomer. Don't look at their family, Zhou Man is an official in the court and a woman. But she alone can reach as many people. They have a lot of children and nephews. As long as they keep studying, there will always be people who can go to work in the future. Let's not talk about the emperor and the courtiers. Our Majesty has changed a few ministers, so, 30 years Hedong, 30 years Hexi, no one knows what the future will be like, and no one should stop at this time. Look down on anyone." Lu Shangsha shook his head and muttered for a while, then nodded and said, "You have seen the character of that girl. If you think it's good, you can decide." Mrs. Lu Tai said, "I see a bit of her aunt's ambition. Although her talent is not comparable, she is better than the children raised in our family." Lu Shangsha curled his lips and said, "How many people in the Manchu dynasty can compare to Zhou Man's talent and talent?" He said, "What she is carrying is a bowl of skill, and no one else can take it away." Xiao Yuanzhang secretly said that when he lifted the fur, she could feel the bone and blood in a blink of an eye. It is necessary to launch 10 or so. This ability is God's special honor to eat. Mrs. Lu Tai remembered something, and asked faintly, "Then if our family can decide on this marriage, won't your granddaughter-in-law also enter the court in the future?" "I can't ask for it," Lu Shangsha said with a smile. "Don't you say that she has some of her sister-in-law's ambition? It would be great if Yaka could also learn from her sister-in-law's 3 points. There is someone to help you when you quarrel." Mrs. Lu Tai remembered what Zhou Liru said jokingly when Lu Huan was embarrassed today, and her eyes lit up. "Okay, since you have agreed, then I will find an opportunity to go to Zhou's house for Huaner." However, Lu Shangsha remembered something. "Don't tell Dalin and Dalin's daughter-in-law about this." Mrs. Lu Tai snorted coldly, "Just go back and talk to them. Will they still object?" She said, "We all raised the children, and the marriage is naturally ours." Lu Shangshu had a headache, so he could only comfort him. "I have to say it too, after all, it is his parents, and Yeer's marriage was decided by them. It's because they decided Yeer's marriage, and Huaner's marriage was decided by us," Mrs. Lu said, still full of anger. "It was decided early in the morning. Why, they are now. Do you want to regret it? Who is she watching out for? Am I just a bad mother-in-law who will teach her to fight against her mother-in-law when I marry my granddaughter-in-law?" Mrs. Lu Tai said, "Both children are raised in front of me, and I let her. She is not willing to stay in the capital to raise the children. She insists that there is no one to take care of Dalin, so she will follow him. He has hands and feet, and there are many servants around him. Why does he have to follow her? It's a pity that my 2 grandchildren have not been with their parents since they were young, especially my Huaner, who was only 2 years old at the time and was still breastfeeding." Seeing Mrs. Liu's tears, Lu Shangsha quickly took out the handkerchief and gave it to her. Okay, I won't say it, okay, haven't you raised your child well?" "I raised them well, but can this grandmother be the same as my mother? Before they were transferred to Taiyuan, I said that the distance was not very far, and the 2 children have grown up a lot, and the official school in Taiyuan is not bad. They should not be too estranged between their father and son, so they asked Yeer to bring Huaner to flee, but what did the 2 of them do? It's better than the 2 brothers to deal with a concubine. These 2 children are still her own flesh and blood. Sure enough, the old saying is right. If you don't raise yourself, you have no feelings. Since you don't have feelings, we will be polite." Provoking their relationship, Mrs. Lu Tai couldn't hide her anger. "Yeer grew up in front of me, and they didn't even ask us to ask about their children's engagement there. It's good to treat the 2 children with this kind of intention. As a result, The two children ran back after they couldn't stay for half a year. Yes, yes, what you said is right, but if you don't say it now, it will be Huan's daughter-in-law who will suffer in the future, Lu Shangshu said. You are out of breath now, what will you do in the future? How many days do you have and how much does she have? Days. Isn't it still them who will be the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in the future? Okay, you curse my short life. Madame Lu angrily stretched out her hand and pinched him, and Lu Shangshu made a sound of ow, covering his arm and shouting, do it again, there are guests outside. Lu Huan got up from the couch with his head covered, and when he caught a glimpse of a projection on the screen, he covered his head and walked over, seeing Zhou Man and the others playing checkers, and seeing Man Bao jumping with a chess piece. One of Bai Shan's chess pieces was eaten. She laughed, picked up the chess piece and said, I won. Yin Or lowered his eyes and said, this kind of chess is interesting, but it doesn't use your brain very much. Man Bao, who said that no brain is used, similar to Go, and one that uses a lot of brains, okay. Bai Shan lost, and nodded after collecting the pieces. It's relatively straight, and it doesn't have as many tricks as Go, but it's really interesting. It's a pity that there aren't many ways to play in the scrapbook you brought. Bai Erlang was still thinking about the game of chess just now. When he saw the shadow, he looked up. When he saw it was Lu Huan, he got up and said, are you awake? Lu Huan said blankly, I dreamed just now that my grandfather and grandmother had a fight. It turned out to be because they were talking. Bai Shan, do your grandfather and grandmother often fight? Lu Huan, it's not very often. Occasionally my grandfather makes my grandmother angry, and my grandmother will hammer it twice. Bai Shan and the others looked sympathetic. He sent a message outside the house, and when he heard the movement, he looked into his head and saw that the young master was awake, so he immediately went to bring tea and poured water, and after moistening his throat, he said, second young master, Mrs. Tai ordered you to rest in the room, don't go out, people outside can't get in. The banquet isn't over yet. The message smiled and said, it's not dark yet. They guess it's going to be dark. They are all watching the dance and listening to the music in the garden. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2408. Mrs. Tang asked the servants of the Lu family to deliver the letter, and when Man Bao received it, he got up and said, I'll take Liu and go first, you guys can continue playing. Lu Huan was just a little sober. He was drinking the unpleasant hangover soup while pinching his nose. Hearing this, he looked up at her and said, it's so early? You don't have dinner before leaving? Don't you want to go back to Huangzhuang directly at night? Man Bao waved, I have a patient to see. I don't have time to eat dinner. Let's play. Lu Huan could only be disappointed, okay. Bai Shan sent Man Bao out, just the two of you. I'll go home to pick up Sunyang. Listen to what Mrs. Tang said. Sunyang went to see it before, but it didn't work much. This time I just brought her. Bai Shan nodded and sent the person to the courtyard where the cars and horses were parked. Madame Tang was already waiting in the car, and when she saw Bai Shan coming over, she smiled and said, you brought it here on purpose, why, can I still abduct someone for you? Bai Shan saluted and said with a smile, I have to trouble my sister-in-law to send someone home later. There are some things at home to bring to her. This is because she is afraid that she will delay Zhou Man too much time and delay her return to Huangzhuang. Madame Tang responded with a smile, and said happily, don't worry, I will definitely send you back with all my tales. Mrs. Tang sent someone to deliver a letter to Lu Yi's assistant in advance, so when the Tang family's carriage arrived at the side door of Zhou's house, as soon as the door knocked, Lu Sunyang came out with a medicine box in a short time. Man Bao asked her, isn't today a holiday? No, it's just that I have a class today at the Imperial Physician's office. After finishing the class, I can leave. I didn't go back to the palace, but went home directly. Today, the Lu family banquet, although it is not a holiday, there are many people who are absent from work and asking for leave to go to drink. Because there are so many people there, the palace seems to be deserted for 2 points, and she has no work on duty, so she just go home first. Man Bao nodded, glanced at her medicine box and asked, "Have you brought everything?" "Yes, it's all packed." Man Bao sat on the wall of the car and asked, "Since you have seen the patient, tell me about her condition." Lu Sunyang was stunned for a moment, and then looked at Madame Tang, who was sitting beside her with some hesitation, a little embarrassed. Man Bao also turned to look at Madame Tang, and after a while, he leaned over and asked Lu Sunyang, "What's the privacy?" Lu Sunyang was helpless and lowered her voice, "Master, this disease is a hidden disease, so." Madame Tang smiled slightly, "I know, my sister told me everything." She turned to look at Man Bao, "I also told Man Bao about this. She suffered from lochia after a miscarriage, and she was cured, but she didn't come for 2 or 3 months some time ago, and she thought she had another lochia. I was pregnant, but after I got a doctor, I was either unsure or said no later. An old doctor prescribed medicine for promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis." The pounding continued, as if all the blood in the body was drained. Man Bao had only heard from her that she was suffering from lochia, but she didn't know that she had also taken medicine for promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis. Her first instinct was to turn her head and ask Lu Sunyang, "Is she having a miscarriage?" "No," Lu Sunyang said in a low voice, "I read it carefully, it shouldn't be pregnant. I also read the prescription prescribed by the previous old doctor and the pulse case written down, but I didn't see any problem, but it was the front of her body was broken during a miscarriage, so." Lu Sunyang paused and then whispered, "Master, she should have no less than 3 miscarriages." Not to mention Man Bao, Ms Tang was startled and her voice cracked, "What?" Lu Sunyang stopped talking. Madame Tang's face changed with anger, and she asked Lu Sunyang, "Is this what she said?" Lu Sunyang said, "The madam and the girl serving by her side said it was 3 times, but I don't think so." She and Man Bao said, "I asked carefully, but she doesn't remember very clearly what happened a few years ago, but the big girl beside her remembered that she had a lot of blood when she had her period 6 years ago, but they said that Ms Wang's menstruation was always inaccurate, sometimes more, sometimes less, so they didn't care." Man Bao asked, "Does she have children?" "Yes," Lu Sunyang said, "there is a son who is 7 years old this year." Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief. It was not a primitive habitual miscarriage, there must be some external cause. Lu Sunyang lowered her eyes and did not continue to speak. But how could Madame Tang's sharp eyes be concealed? She glanced at Lu Sunyang and asked, "Medical assistant Lu, but what else is there to hide?" Dr. Lu smiled and said, "Ms Tang, the rest is the patient's privacy. If you want to know, you can only ask the patient. She can talk about the miscarriage 3 times because it will definitely not be hidden in the end, and it will definitely be included in the pulse case. Because she believes that the patient will be like this now, and the previous miscarriage is the key." Madame Tang pulled a smile and nodded, "Yes, there is a Dr. Lu to help you." When they arrived at the Tang mansion, Ms Tang took the first step and gave the 3 masters and apprentices the space. She knew that Dr. Lu must have something important to say. Sure enough, when Madame Tang left, Lu Sunyang whispered to Man Bao, "Although she didn't say anything, I found that she had some old wounds and some broken bones, and I looked like someone was kicking. Internal injuries from beating." Man Bao's face sank. "Have you asked?" "I asked, but whether it was her or the maids and maids beside her, they all insisted that they didn't. The question was because she had fallen a few times because of the snowy road, but I looked carefully, and some of her injuries were not at all possible. Fell out." Lu Sunyang also reminded, "Master, There are 2 aunts and 2 girls beside her who have been staring at me closely, but the 2 girls she married have always wanted me to stay with her alone, but there has been no chance. Man Bao snorted, it's really courting death, playing with people in this Tang mansion is such a heart. Man Bao told the 2 of them, go in for a while and calm down your expression, and you don't know anything. Lu Sunyang and Zhou Liru responded together, and then they looked at Man Bao's face and asked, Master, are you going to restrain yourself? Man Bao said with a calm face, what am I restraining? It's called Guanwei, do you know? Look at the Shangguan in the court, how many have a smile on people? This is called Guanwei. After all, she went to see the Lady Wang with a gloomy face. As soon as she entered the yard, the servants who came out were stunned. She acted cautiously and bowed her knees when Man Bao asked, where is the patient? Where is Sister Tang? Here, Mrs. Tang, who had regained her mood, walked in with a smile, took Man Bao's hand and said, I'll give you master and disciple time to talk, and I'm thinking of inviting you to the main room for tea first. Whoever knew that you came directly, these little hooves who led you did not know the importance, they neglected you, and I will punish them later. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2409. The maid who led the way for Man Bao and the others was not afraid, but she bowed her head and saluted her mistake. Man Bao's expression softened, and she said to Madame Tang, don't punish them, next time I come, they shouldn't give me snacks. Already. Madame Tang smiled and said to the 2 little girls, why don't you thank Miss Mansoon? The 2 little girls grinned and bowed to Man Bao, and the servant girl who had been waiting by the side smiled and said, Mrs. Tang, Lord Zhou, our madam is already waiting inside, please come in quickly. Madame Tang smiled and led Man Bao in. This is a guest house, the yard is not small, and the main house is naturally not too small. Man Bao knew that only very close or distinguished guests would come to Madame Tang to arrange this guest house. Madame Tang and Man Bao said with a smile, my little sister, she is timid, and she is a gourd with a sawmouth mouth. You are completely lost. I told you brother Tang 2 years ago that I will let you meet when I have time. It's good to see you, if I accidentally become a friend and let her learn a little bit of courage and this bit of cleverness from you, I will be satisfied. Saying that, he pulled Man Bao in to meet Wang. She didn't lie on the bed, but sat neatly on the chair. When she saw her sister came in with a strange little lady, and combined with what she vaguely heard just now, she knew that this was Zhou Man, who was famous all over the world. So she was about to stand up while supporting the table, and the maid beside her quickly reached out to help her. Madame Tang took 2 steps, stepped forward to support her other hand, and frowned, what are you doing, didn't you lie down? Wang smirked and said gently, I'm not tired. In fact, the medicine that Dr. Lu has given me has some effect, and my sister is too surprised. Why bother to invite Master Zhou? If it was anyone else, Mrs. Tang would definitely say, you were so easy to invite human? I spent a lot of effort. But facing this cousin, Mrs. Tang smiled and said, she is different from others, you don't know, we have a good relationship, she calls your brother-in-law Yishan brother, and I call me Yishan sister-in-law, she is her own family, it's easier to get her than any other doctor. Man Bao also smiled and nodded. Mrs. Tang introduced them to them, you also know this Lord Zhou. She has a nickname called Man Bao. You can call her that when you get close. He said to Man Bao again, this is my mother's younger sister. Her name is Rule. If you want to, just call her Sister Rule. If you don't want to, just call her Mrs. Wang. Man Bao laughed and called out Sister Rule. Madame Tang was delighted to hear it, so she and the maid helped her sit down, come on, let our imperial physician Zhou show you. Man Bao sat next to her, first looked at her face, and saw that her face was covered with powder, but she could still see the pale complexion under the powder. Man Bao took out the pulse pillow and checked the pulse, then put his hand away and said, "If my sister doesn't mind the trouble, she'd better clean her face and remove the hairpin. Let's go check it out in the inner room, I want to take a look." Wang Rule had been checked by Lu medical assistant several times, and he naturally knew how it was checked. He blushed for a while and was a little ashamed, but he still supported the girl's hand and got up and went to the inner room. The servants in the house started to move, those who fetched water for water, and those who were looking for clothes to find clothes. Man Bao noticed it, and found that the other two girls who were standing on the side at the beginning were supporting Wang Rule. The one who had been supporting Wang Rule went to find clothes, and the other went to carry water. The servant girl who just went out to meet them in the yard kept smiling and stood aside. At this time, she personally went to serve tea to Madame Tang, Zhou Man, and others. Man Bao lowered his eyes, knowing what to do. Mrs. Tang also had a panoramic view of all this. She didn't think there was anything wrong with this before. After all, the maids and servants around her also performed their duties, but now if you look closely, Xia He and Xia Xiao who went out were both Rule's dowries. Mrs. Tang had a smile on her face, but there was not much smile in her eyes. When the servants brought water to wash Wang Rule's face, and his coat was gone, Man Bao went in to see her. I saw that her face was pale and haggard, and she was more than 10 years older than the delicate makeup just now. "Where is this Mrs. Tang's sister? Is it Mrs. Tang's sister?" However, she has a gentle temperament that Mrs. Tang does not have, and she is approachable. Man Bao stepped forward to check her pulse again, and began to ask in detail, "When did this metrorrhagia start?" These words were answered by the maid and the girl on the side. Because medical assistant Lu had asked these questions before, the aunt on the side could say it in detail without anyone needing to supplement it. But Man Bao still waited for her to answer and asked Wang Rule, "Is that so?" Wang Rule nodded. After Man Bao asked about his condition this time, he asked, "When was the last time this happened? What was it for?" The aunt on the side sighed and said, "My wife had a miscarriage half a year ago. At that time, she had some lochia that couldn't be stopped. Later, she took medicine for more than 2 months." Man Bao asked carefully, and finally asked, "How many miscarriages have you had?" The aunt replied respectfully, 3 times, "Our wife is not in good health, and it is not easy to have a baby." Man Bao carefully looked at Wang Rule's face, and seeing that she kept her eyes down and her head not speaking, she nodded and said, "I'll take a look." After speaking, he said to the people in the room, "Except Sun Yang, everyone else should leave." Madame Tang got up just like last time, but after walking 2 steps, she looked at the aunt and the girl who were going to serve Wang Rule to change clothes and said, "You guys also step back, leave this room to Lord Zhou, she doesn't like to be busy when she sees a doctor. People are waiting." This. The girl couldn't help but look up at her aunt. Auntie smiled quickly, "Mrs. Tang, we stay to serve the madam. The madam is a little dirty, so it's not good to use the hand of Lord Zhou." Man Bao lifted his eyelids and glanced at her, and said solemnly, "Go back." The aunt choked, but because Zhou Man was an imperial physician and her face was cold, she didn't dare to make trouble for a while. After she hesitated for a while, Madame Tang frowned slightly and stared at her badly. "Why, are you staring at Tai Zhou's needles?" The aunt hurriedly responded, and bowed back with the 2 girls. They hid in the outer room with Mrs. Tang, but she stood by the screen and could still hear the movement inside with her ears pricked up. Man Bao and Lu Sunyang unbuttoned her clothes to check together. Man Bao reached out and pressed her abdomen and asked, "Does it hurt?" Wang Rule said in a low voice, "It doesn't hurt. Are you feeling sore?" Man Bao touched her for a long time, and then began to touch up her bones. Lu Sunyang motioned Man Bao with her eyes to look at the faint dark color. It was the color after the old wounds had settled down. This kind of scars must have been injured to the bones to stay. The old injury, and it should not be long, in her experience, it is about half a year. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2410. Every time she thought about this time, her heart skipped a beat, and the guess in her heart became more obvious, but no matter how she rammed around, they all turned away or made other excuses. Since Lu Sunyang entered the palace at the age of 12, she has always been cautious. She knows some things she can say and some things she can't ask, so after asking a few times and she can't ask, she put away her thoughts of inquiring. Man Bao paused at the scar, squeezed hard and asked her, "Does it hurt?" Wang Rule's face turned pale when he saw the scar, but he still said, "It doesn't hurt." Man Bao also knew that it shouldn't hurt at this time. She touched it carefully. It was true that some bones did not inherit very smoothly. Combined with these scars, it was easy to judge that the fracture had been broken. Man Bao checked her back and limbs again. After checking them all, she took out a handkerchief to wipe her hands. She didn't let her wear clothes, and just covered her with a quilt. Wang Rule kept thinking about how she would answer if she asked a question. However, after wiping his hands clean, Man Bao pondered, "You have a disease that can't be cured." The person who listened with pricked ears outside raised his heart, but Wang Rule, who was lying on the bed, relaxed, his back that had been stiff also loosened, and his entire back was leaning against the bed. Man Bao said, "If you want to stop the menstrual blood, you need at least 3 months of acupuncture. Because you have had a miscarriage several times, the foundation is broken, so you have to take it slowly and make up the foundation first, but it is not stable. It is very likely that uterine bleeding will occur in the future, so the best way is that you can continue to use the needle for half a year to a year, so that if the root is cut off, you will not have another miscarriage if you are pregnant again in the future." Wang Rule was taken aback for a moment, and asked, "How long does it take?" Man Bao nodded, "The needles should be punctured for 10 consecutive days. After the 10th day, the needles should be inserted every other day, and then every 10 days, every 2 days, and the needles should be inserted once every 10 days. If it is better, if the drug is absorbed better, the root may be broken after half a year, but if the foundation is not good, it may take a year." Wang Rule was silent for a while and then asked, "Then what do you think of my background?" "It's not very good," Man Bao said bluntly, "so my sister should be prepared to stay in the capital for a long time." She glanced at the figure displayed on the screen, and a cold light flashed in her eyes, and said to her, "Only me and my apprentice can pierce this needle technique." Wang Rule was stunned for a moment, obviously thinking of this. "Yes, do you want to stay in the capital for a long time?" "Yes, I don't know where my elder sister's husband's family is." "It's not far from the capital." "If it's far, you will naturally stay in the capital. After all, this disease is a woman's disease. She is very squeamish. Some of them are not well behaved when exposed to the wind and the sun, so it is best to have a fixed residence, regular diet, regular work and rest, neither cold nor hot." However, Wang Rule's eyes became brighter and brighter, and finally he dragged his clothes and said, "Also, it's okay, I have to ask my family and my sister." Man Bao nodded, "Then let's do the first stitch today. Sunyang, come here." Man Bao watched Lu Sunyang practice acupuncture while reading acupuncture. At the beginning, Wang Rule still had the energy to listen to what Zhou Man said about half an inch of vaginal intercourse and 3 points of Shijuan. Later, his eyelids gradually became heavy, and he slowly fell asleep. Lu Sunyang was puzzled and didn't understand why she still needed to give her a calming acupuncture, but seeing that the master shook her head at her, she didn't ask. "At least not here, ask now." There was only Man Bao's voice pointing at Lu Sunyang from time to time in the room, but Wang Rule's voice was not heard for a while, and it seemed that he would not ask Wang Rule any questions. The aunt, who had been listening with her ears pricked up, breathed a sigh of relief. Madame Tang also retracted her ears, put down the teacup she had been holding in her hand, and bumped it gently. "How's Aunt Ma listening?" Aunt Ma immediately stood up straight, smiled shamefully at Madame Tang, and said, "Mrs. Tang, forgive me, the servants are also worried about our wife. You know, our wife has always been shy." Madame Tang nodded. "Yes, this cousin of mine has been a rabbit since she was a child. She is frightened and very timid. You have taken care of it over the years. Serving the master is the responsibility of the slaves." Mrs. Tang smiled and asked, "I'm too far away, and I can't hear it correctly. What did Imperial Dr. Zhou say? Can it be cured?" Aunt Ma immediately explained what she had just heard. Madame Tang frowned and sighed after a while. "It's so bad, alas, why did she have a miscarriage?" Listening to Imperial Dr. Zhou, she had more than one miscarriage. Aunt Ma said, "Our wife is frail, so it's not easy to have a baby. Alas, every miscarriage is a loss of bone and blood. How can this be improved?" Madame Tang sighed worriedly, then turned around and instructed the servants, "Go, open the warehouse, find all the ginseng and deer antlers that are used to nourish blood and qi, and show Miss Man what they are suitable for, and take them out. Ryle is ready." "Yes." It took another half a quarter of an hour before Man Bao came out. Lu Sunyang stayed inside to look at the needles. She wrote a prescription in front of Aunt Ma and others, called Lu Sunyang and asked her to come out and instruct her on how to prepare this prescription. The two aunts took the opportunity to take a look at the inner room and saw that the lady lying on the bed had needles in her stomach and calf, even her head. Although most of them didn't understand, they understood that qi and blood should not be replenished urgently, but should be replenished slowly, and at the same time, it should be accompanied by hemostasis. However, the prescription prescribed by Dr. Lu was too eager to replenish the blood, but it failed to stop the bleeding. When the time came, Man Bao went in and watched Lu Sunyang pull out the needle. Seeing that Wang Rule was still asleep and her eyes were dark, she covered her with the quilt, and then went out quietly with Lu Sunyang. Man Bao and Aunt Ma said, "She's asleep, and sleep can make her angry, so don't disturb her, she can sleep as long as she can." "But now I can't sleep at night." Man Bao said, "She couldn't sleep at night." Aunt Ma thought about it too, so she stopped talking. Man Bao handed her the prescription just now, and said, "Take this prescription first, and then change the prescription when she breaks the blood. Let Sunyang come and give her an injection these few days." Aunt Ma looked at Madame Tang hesitantly, and whispered, "Can't Master Zhou come in person? Our wife's illness has dragged on for a long time." Before Man Bao could speak, Madame Tang said, "Master Zhou is now taking over His Majesty's errand, and he has to test the smallpox in Huangzhuang every day. This time he came out because Lu Shangshu's family was drinking. How can she come here every day? I just found out that I made a mistake in the last chapter. I should see you at 10 o'clock. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2411. Man Bayadao, the acupuncture technique to be pierced before the blood is cut off is the same. My apprentice's acupuncture is not bad. She is more than enough to do this." Mrs. Tang smiled at her and said, "I hope you can come to see her again when she needs to change her medicine and needles, and give her 2 new methods." After thinking about it, Man Bao nodded and said, "When the time comes, you can send a letter to Bai Shan, and let Bai Shan take it with me and tell me that if I can ask for leave, I will definitely ask for leave. If not, I will ask Sunyang to write a pulse case and send it to me. At that time, I will pass the recipe on. But now Lu Sunyang's pulse case is still less than Zhou Manchu, so it is best to see it for yourself." The prescription was given, and the acupuncture and moxibustion were handed over to Dr. Liu, and Man Bao was about to get up and leave. But Mrs. Tang grabbed her and smiled and said, "What's the hurry, you'll be fine in a while, and go after seeing him." She smiled and said, "He said before that he has a book for you, let's go, let's talk in the study." After pulling Man Bao out, she turned around and instructed Aunt Ma and the others, "Be quiet when you go in and out, and take good care of your wife, don't disturb her rare peace." Aunt Ma immediately responded with a group of servants. Mrs. Tang's eyes slid over Xia He and Xia Cao, and when she saw them standing in the corner with their heads bowed, her eyes turned cold, and she pulled Man Bao away with a smile. Lu Sunyang and Zhou Liru followed behind carrying the medicine box. When they arrived at the main courtyard, they were pulled by Mrs. Tang's personal maid, smiling and wanting to take them to have tea and snacks. Lu Sunyang and Zhou Liru didn't move for a while, and looked at Man Bao together. Man Bao nodded to them, and the two left with the maids. Madame Tang pulled her into the room with a smile, and when the girl had served tea and retired, she looked at Man Bao and said, "Good sister, you wouldn't hide it from me like your apprentice, would you?" Man Bao asked curiously, "Why didn't the schoolgirl ask her directly? After all, this is the patient's privacy, and we doctors can't tell." Madame Tang sneered and said, "Didn't you see the people around her who were guarding them? I just made an excuse to take them away, and I'm afraid they'll come back in a while, and she is indeed a gourd with a saw. Otherwise, she won't be allowed to suffer this grievance and the family doesn't know it yet." Man Bao took a sip of tea, thought for a moment, and said, "I'll let her stay with you for half a year to a year." Madame Tang smiled and said, "I knew you did it on purpose." "No, I really didn't do it on purpose," Man Bao said. "It's true that her disease will take more than half a year to cure. As for whether it will take a year, that's not certain." Madame Tang smiled slightly, "So serious?" Man Bao nodded. Madame Tang was scratching her heart, grabbing her hand and asking, "Tell me honestly, why did she have a miscarriage? Because of standing for a long time? Or is it poor diet? Or is it poisoned?" Mrs. Tang gritted her teeth and said, "Could it be that the Ma family asked her to make rules? Or is the back house uneasy?" Man Bao lowered his eyes and thought for a while, then raised his eyes to look at Madame Tang after a long silence. "I found some scars on her body, I touched the bones, they should have been broken, although I am not sure, but a rib in her chest is this way. It should still be in a fractured state." Madame Tang's eyes widened, with shock and anger in her eyes, and she was speechless for a moment in shock. Mrs. Tang took a few deep breaths. Luckily she didn't get angry immediately, but she stood up abruptly, and after walking around for 2 times, stared at Zhou Man and asked, "Are you right?" Man Bao said, "If it was before, I would definitely not have been so sure, but this time I have touched so many bones on the way to the western regions, so I can't be wrong." "Why didn't you ask her then?" Man Bao raised his eyelids and glanced at her and said, "Ask her what? Those words are not for her, but for you guys in the outer room. How do you think she will answer?" Madame Tang was so angry that she slapped the table and raised her voice, "Someone." Man Bao was a little excited. Although it was not good to meddle in other people's inner house affairs, she still wanted to know. Madame Tang's personal maid trotted in. "What is Madame's order?" Madame Tang's anger froze when she saw Man Bao's excitement. She lowered her eyes and thought for a while, and when she raised her eyes, she calmed down a lot, and said, "Go to the inn and call Xia He or Xia Cao. After that, just say I found some things from the private library, all of them are my dowry, some of them are things we used to use when we lived in my parents' house. Rui Le is in a better mood for treatment, let them come and see what is in the private library, what Rui Le likes and what she lacks, let them choose and arrange it for her." The maid froze for a moment, then responded, and turned away. Madame Tang only had luck, she turned around and tapped Man Bao's forehead. What's your expression? Put away the eyes of watching the show. Let's go, I'll take you out. Man Bao snorted, is this going to send me away? My aunt, look outside for the time. Man Bao looked out and saw that the sun had set in the west, so he jumped up in fright. Madame Tang got up, rolled up her sleeves and said, let's go, I'll take you out, you'll have to go home in a while, Bai Shan should be waiting at home by now, if you don't go back, he's afraid that he will come to pick him up in person. Already. Man Bao could only leave regretfully. Although she wanted to, she didn't ask Mrs. Tang to tell her the truth in the future. She didn't even plan to ask Wang Rule the truth in the future. So why bother asking about peeling people's wounds? She can accidentally find out that it is one thing, so there is no need to inquire about it. Tell Mrs. Tang, firstly, because Mrs. Tang is a family member, she feels she has the right to know, secondly, she has good feelings for Wang Rule, and she told her in her heart that she should tell Mrs. Tang. The smile at the corner of Man Bao's mouth was a little cold, so Madame Tang didn't say it anymore. She has a bad temper, and Master Tang is not easy to mess with. You dare to monitor people all the time when you beat people like this, Man Bao led Lu Sunyang and Zhou Liru back. Madame Tang stood at the door and watched their carriage go away, and the smile on her face collapsed. Tang County Magistrate, who was riding a horse from another road, saw it from a distance, and was startled. But Mrs. Tang had already heard the voice and turned her head to look. When she saw him, her eyes lit up, so she waved to him. Magistrate Tang could only take Mingli back on horseback, with a bright smile on his face. After dismounting, he glanced at the direction the carriage was leaving, and asked with a smile, how did Madame know that my husband was back and came to pick me up at the door? Mrs. Tang said, I didn't come to pick you up on purpose. I happened to send Man Bao out. I thought you were coming back soon, so I stood there for a while. As for the liar, it was clear that he only saw him when he was going to turn around and go back. But Magistrate Tang raised a smile and said with a moved face, Madam is so nice. Raiwan completed on the third day, see you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2412. Tang County Magistrate followed Mrs. Tang back to the main courtyard before entering the house, and the girls saluted one after another. When he saw Xiaohe and Xia Xiao, he knew that Mrs. Tang had something to do. He breathed a sigh of relief, turned around and entered the inner room. Take off your official robes and change into regular clothes. When Mrs. Tang saw him go in, she turned her head to look at Xiaohe and Xia Xiao, and asked, why did you two come here together? Who is taking care of Rule? Xiaohe was startled, and quickly said, Aunt Ma and the others are waiting by your side. Madam hasn't woken up yet. If Madam is worried, the servant will go back. The lid of the cup in Madame Tang's hand fell on the cup with a bang. Not only was Xia Hexiako shocked, but Master Tang in the room was also startled, and then he perked up his ears with interest. Mrs. Tang said, you are Rui Li's dowry, and you should be her confidants. I won't say it, you should stay by her side all the time. As a result, when I called here, you two came over. Xiaohe and Xia Xiao turned pale with fright, and hurriedly knelt down to apologize. Madame Tang waved her hand and asked the maid to take them down for inspection. Xiaohe and Xia Xiao were startled and frightened, their faces were dumbfounded, and they didn't know what to check. When they were taken to the front room to undress, the two of them were frightened to death, and they clung to the front of the clothes tightly and refused to let go. Yunko walked in quickly from the outside, pushed Xiaokeo back, pushed her down on the back half of the bed and pressed her, you are stupid, you are better than our wife, and you don't even look at who is in this room, those are all decent aunts in our family, and they came to check on the lady to give you face, if you don't follow it, a rough old lady will come in later, and they don't know the importance of their actions. Xia Xiao couldn't help crying, and said in a panic, "Cousin, what are you going to do?" Is explained, "How can you strip people's clothes when they come up?" Yunko, "How do I know what to do? This is also the order of the madam, but don't worry, we will not harm you. Don't you know, our master and madam, which couple in Manjing does not have several concubines between them? Waiting in the room. You are still in Miss Six's room, so you won't be embarrassed, so let's take a look." Xia Xiao was still ignorant, but Xia He, who was also frightened by the sight, vaguely understood something. She shook her hands to undo the belt, but her hands were shaking so badly that she couldn't pull it out for a long time, and she tied the knot to death. The maid, who had been standing beside her with a sullen face, finally calmed down when she saw it. She stepped forward and pulled the belt, and untied it for her in 3 or 2 strokes. After checking here, Yunko and the 2 servants came back to the house with red and swollen eyes. Most of the people in the house retreated. At this time, only Tangda and Madame Tang were sitting together and drinking tea. Master Tang just took a sip of his tea. When he saw them coming, he put down the teacup and looked at Madame Tang. Madame Tang thought for a while with a sullen face, and nodded, "You go out first." Master Tang raised his eyebrows, "I thought Madame wanted me to help you try the case and seek justice for you." Mrs. Tang said with a sullen face, "When I can use you." Master Tang raised his eyebrows, then got up and went out. As soon as he got out of the yard, he breathed a sigh of relief, beckoned to call a girl, and asked, "When did Madame come back today?" The girl bowed her head and said, "I'll be back before I'm right." "With Miss Man?" "Yes, as well as Dr. Lu and the 3rd wife of the Zhou family." Master Tang just touched his chin, and he came before he was right. "It's a long time now. It takes 2/4 of an hour to see a doctor, but it took them an hour and a half, which is not short." Yunko knelt on the ground and said, "Xia Xiao has 3 wounds on her body, in addition to those from kicks, there are also a number of whiplash wounds. Xia He has more wounds, and the wounds above the wrist are so tired that they can hardly be seen. The original flesh is no longer there." Madame Tang was furious, slapped the table fiercely, and asked, "What did they say?" "Xia Xiao only knows how to cry," Xia He said, "she has to ask Mrs." Madame Tang pursed her mouth tightly, but she felt better in her heart, and only now did she feel a burning pain in her hand. With a sullen face, she said, "Go and bring the 2 of them here." Xia He and Xia Xiao's clothes had been put on again, but their faces were pale, as if they were about to faint in the next moment. They knelt down as soon as they entered the room. Madame Tang collapsed when she saw them entering the door. She hated that iron was not steel, and pointed and scolded, "Who are you kneeling there for? Get over here." The 2 walked forward on their knees and knelt in front of Mrs. Tang. Mrs. Tang raised their chins and asked, "Let me ask you, how many times your wife has miscarried? How did they all miscarry?" The 2 of them were pale and trembling all over and didn't speak. Madame Tang snorted coldly, let go of their chins and said, "Why, hide it for the Ma family and show loyalty to them. What can they give you?" Xia Xiao's whole body was soft on the ground, lying on her stomach as if she had no bones. Xia He was slightly stronger than her, but she was too shaken to say a complete sentence. "But that's it," she also stammered and asked. "Husband, Madam, how should I ask?" Madame Tang asked in a calm voice, "What does this mean?" Xia He's tears fell in series, but after the first sentence came out, she was no longer very scared, and asked shiveringly, "Madam knows, can you take our madam out of the sea of misery?" Still I also told our wife to bear it. If the Ma family knew about it, they would fight more fiercely." Madame Tang felt dizzy and grabbed her shoulder. "What do you mean, the Wang family knows?" Xia Xiao was still lying on the ground shaking her body and crying. Xia He nodded slightly with pale lips, and said with a trembling mouth, Second, Madam said that when husband and wife fights, the head of the bed is at the end of the bed. Our Lady, yes, our wife has been home for less than 2 days. Second, the second lady, well, the lady was sent back, and the uncle poured wine on the lady's head, saying that she was sleazy and ran back to her parents' house, so don't come back if you can, and come back before he can pick her up. Madame Tang was so angry that she swept all the cups on the ground, and gritted her teeth, Miss Kui. These 2 words seemed to open the hearts of the 2 girls, and the 2 collapsed at once. Xiaohe suddenly cried out in the sky, stepped forward and hugged Mrs. Tang's feet, crying so hard, Miss, eldest Miss, our Miss is suffering, the second lady is not a human being, she is not a human being, our Lady wants to see the eldest master, and the eldest master is the master. The second lady said that the family's livelihood is getting more and more difficult. The eldest master, even the second master, sent our young lady back without letting me see you. The Ma family had only 3 points of courage, but it increased by 12 points at once. Since then, that beast has not treated our young lady as a human being. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2413. Miss, what do you think our young lady should do? What should she do? There is no direct brother, and my own aunt can't stop me. Who can save our young lady? Who can save her? We said we were looking for the eldest lady, but the eldest lady was far away in Yizhu. The letters sent in those 2 years had to pass through the hands of the old lady over there before they could reach the lady, not to mention the letters that the lady wanted to send out, even after the holidays. The gifts for each family can't reach the lady. Miss, can you save our lady, can you save her, or send us back like the second lady? If, please let's relax for a few days, miss, let her be more decent, more decent. It took Mrs. Tang a long time to calm down and asked, does the fourth lady know about this? The reason why Wang Rule came to the capital to seek medical treatment was strongly suggested by the fourth. Xiaohe hugged Mrs. Tang's leg and cried, I don't know if the fourth lady knows, our lady hasn't taken the initiative to mention this to outsiders since the second lady. Madame Tang understood. She thought for a while, then sneered, and asked, how many of the people you brought this time are dowries, and how many are from the Ma family? Apart from the 2 slaves and servants, there are no dowries. The dowries in the past were either sent to Zhuangzi, or they have already been sold. It was because the group of people outside was gone that they were completely trapped in the back house, unable to move no matter how much money was thrown out. At first, the master and servant were reckless and bought several servants with money. They also wanted to let people send letters to the outside world. As a result, those letters were transferred to those people, so they lost one person and another people. Later, they were very cautious, and they only spread goodwill in the Ma's back house, thinking that one day they would be able to use it. As a result, when they thought they were safe, the hand they stretched out was chopped off again. They lost 2 aunts, 3 big girls, and 4 little girls, and now the 2 of them are left with the young lady. How can they dare to move? Even the young lady refuses to open her mouth easily. Sometimes it is necessary to use the young lady to come forward, and the young lady also goes away with a smile, and comes back with a smile. She doesn't say a word of extra words, and she doesn't do a lot of extra things. After 3 or 4 years, the other party has softened a bit, but this kind of thing is not unprecedented. Sometimes they are just bored, and they deliberately let their guard down and let them act so that they can get their hands on them. They didn't understand before, so they were always reckless, thinking that they had really fooled them, thinking that those people's hearts were really good, that they could really buy people, and because of this they lost one person after another. Since then, they have learned that in this world, it is not enough for you to have a good heart, nor is it enough for you to have enough money. But this is the Tang mansion, this is the eldest lady, she was so hot when she was a girl, she dared to lean against the wall to look at the prince, and the eldest lady who could not tolerate sand in her eyes, so Xiaohe weighed it in her heart. After weighing it again, it was still a shivering move. Mrs. Tang asked the people they followed this time, how many people came to the Tang mansion, and there were people outside the Tang mansion. Xiaohe didn't know if they had other arrangements outside the Tang mansion, but he knew how many people had come in their line. There are 3 others who didn't enter the mansion with us. They were all servants in the outer courtyard. They were gone when they entered the mansion, and I don't know when they disappeared. Xiaohe finally stopped crying, but she cried too hard just now. At this time still trembling from time to time, but the words are very clear, but every day Aunt Ma has to go ahead and give some orders, or ask people to buy some dried fruits, or snacks, etc. Anyway, there are all kinds of reasons to go. Madame Tang didn't expect the Ma family to think so thoroughly, so she waved her hand silently with luck, take them down to wash up, get rid of the redness and swelling on their eyes, find 2 sets of clothes that are the same as theirs and put them on, don't let them go. There's a clue over there. Mrs. Tang gritted her teeth and said, treatment is the most important thing at this time, and I will clean them up together after I get it right. Xiaohe and Xia Xiao were overjoyed, and they all kowtowed to Madame Tang. Madame Tang had a fire in her chest and ran to find Master Tang. Master Tang listened to her cracking words while losing her temper, and brought her some tea. Madame Tang drank her drink in one gulp, and asked Master Tang with anger in her eyes, tell me, how do you deal with this beast? She has already asked everything about it for so many years. Ma Hongzhou was not serious when he first started. At that time, Ma was beating Ma Hongzhou again and apologized. Because he was only slapped, Wang Rule tolerated it. But the second time Ma Hongzhou was out of control, so Wang Rule went back to his parents' home. But I didn't expect that Mrs. Wang Er would send her back directly, and directly make her lose face at the Ma family's side. Since then, no one has put her in the Ma family, from Ma Hongzhou to servants and servants. In the eyes. So Mrs. Tang not only hated the Ma family, but also her second aunt. For the first time, Mrs. Tang couldn't hold back her harsh words in front of her husband, it's the seed that came out of the concubine, and Mrs. Kui didn't teach people well, and the aunt who returned home didn't say she helped her out, but she dared to tell her. People are sent back and forth. But Master Tang frowned, this doesn't look like Kui's tutor, is there any grudge between them? Madame Tang frowned for a moment, because of my 5th brother's adoption. Wang Rule came from the 2nd house. The last time the direct branch was divided was when her grandfather got married, so they are the same great-grandfather. They all still live in the front and back alleys. When the corner door is closed, it is a big family with a single door and a single courtyard. When the corner door is opened, it is the connecting Liubao. Mrs. Tang grew up there before the age of 12, and was the head of the child when she was a child. Ran around with his brothers and sisters. Wang Rule's father has 2 brothers, and there is no separation of the family. He is the 2nd in the family, the 5th in the direct branch, and the entire family is ranked 12. But they basically only talked about the side of the direct branch, so they were all shouting from Wang Wu, he had no son. No, now there is. Wang Er adopted his youngest son to Wang Wu. Both father and son happened to be ranked 5th, but they were unlucky, because Wang Wulang adopted every 2 years, and he had not had time to take it from Wang Wu. Taking what was in his hand, he died. Master Tang continued to ask, how do you want to resolve this matter? Do you want to continue living with the Ma family, or go home with Li? If it is, what will happen to the child? You have listed the results you want so that you can determine the way to go. Now is not the time to be angry. I don't think sister-in-law has any good ideas. Why don't you ask her what she means? We will give her the matter. It can be accomplished. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2414. As long as you have the heart, it is not difficult to ask Wang Rule's opinion. Xiaohe and the others are putting on their eyes and sorting out their mood, and finally brought a bunch of things back with someone. The faces of the two of them were still as docile as before, with their heads lowered and their eyebrows lowered, with some numbness. Because it was already dark, the lighting in the room was not very good. Besides, Wang Rule was still asleep and had not woken up yet, so there were not many lights in the yard, so people could see. When Aunt Ma saw that they brought so many things back, she stepped forward and asked, "Why did you bring so many things back?" Xiaohe's voice was as flat as before, "Madam must give it, saying that it is something from the previous boudoir, and our madam should be used to it." She paused, then said in a low voice, "Madam asked our wife to stay here for treatment, and we will go back when the root of the disease is gone. She also asks Xia Cao and I to persuade Madam. As for the house, Madam will send a letter to her. Ask." Aunt Ma knew this when Zhou Man said that the cure would take half a year to a year. In fact, she didn't want to go back. If the lady was obedient, it would be fine to stay here for a year and a half to get cured. But this kind of thing is the master's business, she can just do her part. The news has been handed out today, the letter should be able to be sent tomorrow, and the government will make its own decision. So she looked at the things, nodded and said, "The madam is still sleeping, you move lightly, don't wake up the madam." "Yes." Seeing them go in, Aunt Ma called a girl and whispered, "Be careful, don't let them say things they shouldn't say to outsiders, call someone over there today, if I don't pay attention, you will let them both and go out, if you go back and let the uncle and the old lady know about it, be careful of your skin." The girl shuddered, her face turned pale and she bowed her head in response, pulled out the bracelet on her wrist and stuffed it into her hand, begging, "Auntie, please don't tell me, I was the vigil last night, and Madam woke up 7 or 8 times at night. I can't sleep well, and I been busy during the day, and I accidentally took a nap in the next afternoon, who knew they would be called away?" "Humph." Aunt Ma took the bracelet and whispered, "I'll let you go this time. Next time, I won't dare to cover it up for you." The girl nodded again and again. When Wang Rule woke up, Xiaohe and Xia Cao didn't show their faces, but he was very happy. After so many years, this was the first time that Madam slept so well. However, Wang Rule felt lazy and wanted to sleep again, but Aunt Ma was afraid that she would sleep badly, so she smiled and comforted her. Xiaohe and Xia Cao were about to serve Wang Rule's dressing. She must have been dirty since she slept yesterday afternoon. Aunt Ma glanced at a girl and said, "Chun Xian, you and Xiaohe go to serve Madam, Xia Cao, you go to the kitchen to get breakfast." A few girls responded. Xiaohe and another girl helped Wang Rule to go to the bathroom to change. Wang Rule didn't like other girls to serve, even though Chengxin had been by her side for many years, she still only let Xiaohe and Xia Cao do personal things. Chengxin also knew that, so she just stood aside and handed Xiaohe something, as usual. What the Ma family wants is that they stay in sight. Xiaohe carefully arranged Wang Rule's belt, carrying Chengxin on his back, and a small folded note was stuffed into Wang Rule's belt. Wang Rule saw it and looked down at Xiaohe. Xiaohe just lifted his eyelids and glanced at Madam, then lowered his eyes and continued to straighten the belt. Wang Rule changed his clothes and felt more comfortable. He nodded to Xiaohe and Chengxin with a blank expression, "You guys go down." Chengxin knew that she was going to change, so she bent down and lit an incense, then took the dirty clothes and walked out with Xiaohe. Across a screen, Wang Rule sat on the toilet. Her fingers gently took out the note from her belt and spread it out on her lap. It was quite a piece of paper, densely written on it. This is a letter written by Mrs. Tang to her. The front of the letter is quite sad and angry, and the back is to ask her what she wants. If she still wants to go back to the Ma family, she and the Wang family can definitely keep her safe. If she doesn't want to go back, she has her own way of not going back. Mrs. Tang was very disgusted by Ma Hong and the Ma family, so she suggested that Wang Rule leave the Ma family, regardless of whether they were in harmony or not, to leave the Ma family. It is still easy for the Wang family to raise an ant. Wang Rule lowered his head and quietly looked at the letter spread out on his lap. Tears dripped drop by drop, and the ink on the letter was dizzy. She wiped away her tears expressionlessly, then folded the letter carefully and put it in her sleeve. She has thought about this question countless times: what should I do? The second time she was beaten, when she returned to her parents' house for the first time, what she thought was that her parents would come forward and make the Ma family pay the price. With Conger here, even for him, the marriage had to continue. At that time, she never thought about leaving, let alone reconciling. But when she was sent back by the second lady to face everything about the Ma family, she knew that she couldn't stay in the Ma family any longer, and in the end she would either go out horizontally or vertically. But there are also 3 ways to go out. Just like what she thought, Mrs. Tang was also asking her which one she wanted, whether to leave with her and leave alone, or to leave with the child, or to separate the family and not to leave. She took the child back. She knew that of the 3 methods, the third one was the easiest, the first one was not difficult, and the second one was very difficult. But why? Viciousness flashed in Wang Rule's eyes. Why should the son she gave birth to stay in the Ma's house in Jiansang, and still have the surname Ma? With the guidance of Master Tang, and on their own territory, they did things like exchanging information very smoothly. Mrs. Tang personally brought the 3 children to have breakfast with Wang Rule, and when the 2 sisters leaned against each other to watch the children play, Mrs. Tang took out the note from Wang Rule's sleeve and stuffed it back to herself. And asked her, which of the 3 snacks you just sent from the kitchen is your favorite? Wang Rule drank the bitter medicine brought up, wiped the corner of his mouth and said, the third one is the best, but the second one is my favorite. Madame Tang raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, me too. I don't know what the cook put in it, it's a little bitter, but don't tell me, at this age, it's not like I like to eat sweets when I was a child. It's not bad to feel bitter, and it's refreshing to eat for a while. Wang Rule smiled slightly, took Mrs. Tang's hand and said with a smile, I think my sister's taste has not changed, and I didn't like to eat sweets much before. Madame Tang sighed, yeah, but it's you, who used to be unable to eat at all, but now drinking medicine is like drinking water, so you can eat it without blinking. Aunt Ma and the others stood by and listened, not at all doubting that there was anything wrong with these words. The next chapter is around 10 o'clock at night.